From the bright cloud, the Father's voice was heard. This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him.
With you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain where they could be alone. There in their presence he was transfigured. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Suddenly Moses and Elijah appeared to them, and they were talking with him. Then Peter spoke to Jesus. "Lord," he said, "it is wonderful for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He was still speaking when suddenly a bright cloud covered them with shadow, and from the cloud there came a voice which said, "This is my Son, the Beloved. He enjoys my favor. Listen to him." When they heard this, the disciples fell on their faces, overcome with fear. But Jesus came up and touched them. "Stand up," he said, "do not be afraid." And when they raised their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus. As they came down from the mountain, Jesus gave them this order: "Tell no one about the vision until the Son of Man has risen from the dead." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good morning. We step into the second Sunday of Lent. Kita melangkah ke minggu Prapaskah yang kedua. Perjalanan iman, pertobatan, membersihkan diri kita dalam perjalanan iman kita. It's a whole experience, my dear friends, during the season of Lent, is to examine ourselves. The whole zeal and enthusiasm that lies within us in our spiritual walk path, to see how much we are eager to make that little change in our path. I'm reminded of the story of this young boy, 4 years of age. He was on the drive with his dad, sitting in the car, and they were going to the beach. And this boy was so excited. He says, "Dad, have we reached that? Have we reached yet, Dad? Have we reached it?" And the father was getting a bit annoyed as he kept repeating it. He says, "You ask me one more time, you're not going to go there." And the boy went silent. And after a few minutes, he says, "Excuse me, Dad. Excuse me, Dad. Will I still be 4 years old when we reach there?" That's the whole enthusiasm of a young one, looking for that experience. And that's how life is all about, this whole experience of Lent. That whole fiery experience just to go through. I've said this yesterday, I'm saying this today. The RCI catechumens, the members of the elect, are in their final stage during this week and month. They enter into what is known as the intense preparation, where they'll have their scrutinies just for that sacrament of initiation. And there's this great expectation in them. The danger with this whole experience of Lent is that you are caught in a culture of appearance. Many of us, we hold on to a culture of appearance. We are always taken from what is of the offset, outside of us. We buy a book, it's always about the cover of the book. We get wrapped up with the packaging of a gift and never the content. And that's the danger with Lent. You are so much indulged into this whole experience of the outside, the appearance, that you fail to see what's happening in the stirrings that's happening inside. Lent is a moment to step inwardly, to begin to examine your life, your relationships, and begin to ask yourselves questions that can be at times very painful and challenging. That's Lent. Today we enter into another experience. Lent is always about a movement. It's a movement. You will find yourselves during the weekend Eucharist, we are moving in different space. Last week, if you remember, we were at the desert. It was a temptation. It was the wilderness that you and I were. And every time when you start off with a good intention, with a right purpose, you will always find yourself falling into temptation to relapse and to fall back to your old ways, your habitual practices. That was the temptation. Today we are up on the mountain. It's the transfiguration of the Lord. Transfigurasi. Di mana kita melihat kemuliaan Tuhan yang berubah rupa. It's a whole experience of one who is up on the mountain. Sometimes it's good to have a glimpse, like the young boy who wanted to have that beach. It's good to see what's at the end or the tail end of that journey, and that's what happens. At the end of the whole experience of Lent, you are transfigured. You are transfigured into the image of God. Life changes for you. And Jesus gave a glimpse of this to the disciples, Peter, James, and John, at the Mount Tabor, just to have an idea of what entails in this whole pilgrimage and journey of life that they were going through. You may call it the resurrection. You may call it, behold, the image of God, a transformation of life, everything that goes on. Transfiguration comes from the Latin word transfigure, And in English, it means metamorphosis. That's all. A change in image, a change in content, a change in figure. Metamorphosis. Just like how you look from a caterpillar to a butterfly, from a seed to a plant. It just changes its whole image. And to do that, my dear friends, you need to be transformed, to be transfigured. That's all. You begin to look at yourself and ask yourselves, what needs to be transformed in my life? What needs to be changed at this very juncture of my life? What needs? I've said this on Friday, and I'm just going to recap and rephrase it. Lent, my dear friends, is like being in a garden, and it's about pulling out the weeds. That's all. That's all Lent. Seperti menarik keluar lalang dalam kebunmu. All that is not needed needs to be pulled out. The garden of your soul is filled with the good and the bad, between the wheat and the darnel, between the wheat and the weeds. And sometimes it's very painful to get down on your knees, to squat, and to start pulling out those weeds. It's just horrible. And sometimes you get tired of it. You just get so tired of pulling it because you tell yourself, "Oh, Father, I pull and pull, it keeps growing back. I keep pulling, it keeps growing back." And the danger is that when you enter into that space of pulling out those weeds that have found its roots in your life, you may enter into what is called spiritual procrastination. We all procrastinate and we tell ourselves, never mind lah, next week I'll change. This week I'll have the laksa. It's okay. Next week I'll fast. We do it in many ways, my dear friends, in our spiritual walk, in our spiritual path. We procrastinate many things in our lives. And the danger is not knowing, unconsciously, the weeds would have spread all around your garden. And then you tell yourselves, it's okay lah, that's me, it's all right. Whether you like it or not, accept me. And you just laze around that and you go on with your life until something happens and then you tell yourselves, oh gosh, why? That's the whole part of spiritual life, my dear friends. When you begin to look at yourselves and you tell yourselves, I need to get to the root of that weed and I need to pull it out and I need to work on it. That's the whole transformation of the transfiguration, my dear sisters and brothers, is getting to that tail end of what you're going through, that habitual practice. Some of us are struggling with lust. We keep finding ourselves indulging in internet pornography. We keep ourselves going back to the same pattern of our behavior by our conversations and our thoughts. And it's just a repetition of our life. Some of us are indulging in some form of addictive behavior. And we are struggling with it. And sometimes we tell ourselves, I've tried, Lord, I've tried so hard. And yet I'm not working on anything. there's no fruit in it. It's always a painful, my dear friends. As I said, that whole process of conversion takes patience, it takes prayer, it takes persistence. Sitting on that garden and pulling out that weeds, it's not an easy task. But once you've accomplished it and once you're finished, you look at it and you say, gosh, I did a good job. I've worked on it. And you feel good about it. That's the whole experience on transfiguration that I'm trying to say. It's never easy for a caterpillar to go through that metamorphosis to become a butterfly, or for a seed or a grain to die and to bear fruit. It's in scriptures, until and unless a grain falls to the ground and dies, it bears no fruit. But if it does, it bears fruit in a plenty. What you need to do is very simple. It's in the gospel text today. You just need to listen to Jesus. You just need to sit back and allow God to unfold to you what's His plan. Dengarkanlah renungan, dengarkanlah petikan, dengarkanlah Dia. Itu saja yang diminta oleh Yesus dalam bacaan Injil hari ini. Dalam pertukaran perubahan kehidupan kita, sekaligus bertobat, membersihkan diri ke hidup yang baru, yang jernih. That is all that the Lord is asking from us, to move into that right path. Listen, I said to you many times, listen comes from the Latin word obere. Obere means obedience. And when you listen to it, you do it. That's why your children, my dear friends, they hear you, but they don't listen to you. They hear you, but they don't listen to you. Some of you are hearing me out, but you're not listening to me. It's a whole understanding of how open you are, how docile, how fragile you are to God's experience in your life. He knocks at the doors of our heart every given moment, my dear friends. Even at this moment, as I'm speaking to you, He's stirring that grace in you just to listen to Him. Because sometimes we are hardened by our hearts. We are ignorant, and we have closed that door because of our life of that comfort. And we don't want to move that. You know, one thing I've always looked in CDM is that we are very comfortable to our seats. When you come in, you'll always take your same seat. And you will only look for the fan. And then you look where the aircon blower is. And then you'll sit there and say, it's so nice. That's how spirituality is all about, my dear friends. Sometimes you need to get up, pick up your mat and walk. You need to get up and move from that space. And it's not easy. Because one man did it today. And it's in the first reading, Abraham. Dari buku Kejadian. Abraham did it. God told him, Abraham, get up, take your family, and leave to a distant land. And I promise you, Abraham, I will bless you 100-fold, not only in this generation, but in all generations to come. Beyond the human imagination, I will give it to you, Abraham. At once, Abraham got up, left his land, and he walked into the path that God called him. That's obedience in action. That's walk the talk. That's what Abraham did, my dear sisters and brothers. That's the change in his life. And his name was changed from Abraham to Abraham. That's his life. The father of faith. Obedience to God's word. As we step into this second Sunday of Lent, God will stir in you if only you would enter into the silence of your heart to listen to that word. You know, I just want to tell you this. It's very interesting. A young boy told me this just a couple of weeks back. If you take the word silent, it's with the alphabet S-I-L-E-N-T. Am I right? If you turn it around in a very beautiful way, you'll get the word listen from that same word. The alphabet for listen is hidden in silent. If you could just do that, you will find what God is asking of you.